that the word revolution is probably a little overused. I've heard soft drinks being called revolutions. I've heard cars being revolutionary designs. But I genuinely think, in the true sense of the word, we are actually on the verge of a revolution. I use the word revolution with all the gravity and reverence I can muster. If you think about it, that photo there is actually only a day or two old. There's 50 to 70,000 people gathered today in a movement called Occupy Wall Street. You know, this is the hallmarks of revolutionary times. What's about to take place is a revolution. Everything we know as we know it will change. The nature of work, the nature of lifestyle, the nature of wealth, it's all changing as we stand here. Before we look forward, however, I want to have a look back at the last revolution. If we can go back in time, 250 years ago, we'd go to the agricultural age. And the agricultural age was defined by the fact that most people worked the land. They were mostly farmers. They derived their incomes from getting out on the land and being farmers. Along came some technological breakthroughs. We saw fossil fuels, we saw steam engines, we saw machinery come into the marketplace around that time. One tractor could do the work of 100 men in the field. You can imagine the fear and the anxiety of seeing such a radical shift for people in the agricultural age. One textile factory could make all the suits that all the tailors could make. And we entered into the Industrial Revolution as a result of those technological breakthroughs. Technology changed things. You weren't able to fight it. You couldn't avoid it. It was a revolution. There's no way that the people in the field could just dig hard enough to keep up with the tractor. You either moved on or you became tractor fodder. If you took the time machine back over the last couple of hundred years, you'd find the Industrial Revolution. There's a lot less chance you'd meet farmers. Instead, you'd meet factory workers. In the early part of the Industrial Revolution, you'd see people working on machines, working repetitive tasks, and making physical objects. In the later part of the Industrial Revolution, towards the year 2000, you'd see people working on different sorts of machines, manufacturing information and data. Whether you're blue collar or white collar, it's the same. It's the Industrial Revolution. You work repetitive tasks at one machine, and you look forward to the day that you can finally retire. I believe that we're actually at the dawn of an entire new age, a time where we actually enter something called the Entrepreneur Revolution. It means, quite simply, if we were to take our time machine forward in time for the next 50 to 100 years, rather than seeing people work the land or working in factories, we would see people working in small, dynamic, entrepreneurial teams, less than 150 people. Why do I believe this? Once again, it is all about technology. Technology changed things. Technology right now is robbing the factories of their awesome competitive advantage and their scale. Technology has made it possible for any small business such as yourself to find a market globally, to access tiny little niches, to access factories when you need them but not when you don't, to build a brand, to be open for business 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and to innovate like no other time in history. Small business can do almost all the things that big businesses can do, but they can do one special thing that big businesses have a very hard time doing. Small business has spirit. Small business actually cares about what they're doing. It has a team who care. They know their customers. They love what they do. They respond faster. There's less red tape. The workplace is more fun, and everyone gets to have a voice in small business. Small business is also the vehicle for making a difference. When a company has less than 150 staff, everyone tends to know everyone else. There's a buzz and excitement and a tribal feeling that gets lost inside big companies most often than not. When the founder of the business is involved in the operation, there's a magic. Rarely is the magic scalable for big businesses. For these reasons and more, top-performing people are going to quit their jobs at big factories and go out and start small businesses. And they're going to take the other top-performing people with them. They're going to form entrepreneurial teams, and they'll be faster, more cost-effective, more nimble, more responsive, more profitable. So if technology creates revolutions, let's take a quick look at how this revolution got started and when it's likely to really take off. In the late 1800s, we saw a technological breakthrough, the telephone. But interestingly enough, it wasn't until the 1910s and 20s that it really took off, and it made it possible for businesses to have multiple locations within a small geography. In the 1920s, commercial air travel was born, but it wasn't until the 1950s that it was popularised. Once again, a 10, 20, 30-year lag time before the systemic changes arrived, and it made businesses have the ability to have multiple locations interstate and internationally. 1930s, television was invented, but most people believe it was a 1950s phenomenon because that's when it was popularized. We see a 20-year lag time again before the systemic change. And once again, this allowed the birth of the brand, the international brand. Whoever dominated the airwaves dominated our spending habits. We jump forward into the 60s, and you'll see the first computers. But it wasn't until the 80s that we see computers being purchased in significant numbers by business people. Now, in the 80s, you might have seen a very subtle shift. For the first time, if you looked really closely, you'd see tiny little small businesses where you couldn't tell if they were a small business or a big business. The birth of the personal computer allowed people to get out there and compete and look big even when they were small. It was the beginning of it all. In 1979, we had another revolution, a two-pronged device, both a mobile phone and a microwave oven, all in one. Once again, it freed us from the offices, and it began a revolution that through the 90s would really change the way we do business. 1989, Tim Berners-Lee, on a Next computer, by the way, came up with the World Wide Web, and the internet was born. History will show that it took close to 10 to 20 years before becoming ubiquitous. I'm stunned to discover that even in 2010, 20% of British homes still didn't have a connection to broadband internet. 1998, Google makes the whole world searchable. Everything you want, anything you need, any question that you need answered, it's all available in a matter of seconds. 2004, social media gets born, democratizing information in a way some people who shared common interests could come together rather than just simply sharing friendships over common geography. 2008, we have a huge shift with cloud computing. It gives birth to the virtual business. Staff, customers, they can be anywhere in the world, and the business experience, the customer experience or the staff experience is identical, and no one cares where you're geographically based anymore. But what we've learned from history is that there's a 10 to 20 year lag time before things become massive and ubiquitous. We can see that there's a lag for these huge changes to really take on. We're just seeing the effects of the internet through the 2000s. We're seeing the true effects of Google now. We'll see the impact of social media and cloud computing over the next 10 years. We don't need to wait, though. We know exactly what's going to happen. If we look carefully, we'll see an entrepreneur revolution unfold. All the technology that we're seeing makes a small business look big. It makes micro niches available and accessible. It allows you to get out there and do business and innovate like never before. So let's be honest. Where would you rather work? Would you like to work in a soulless company that cares only about the balance sheet and treats you like a number? Or instead, would you like to be part of a small dynamic team of creative people servicing the needs of a niche you feel passionate about? An entrepreneur is not just the founder of the business. In my opinion, founders get way too much credit. An entrepreneur is someone who makes valuable things happen and who takes responsibility for their success or failure. In that context, high-performing entrepreneurial teams can only exist because the entrepreneurship is shared. Your goal in the entrepreneur revolution is to create value, to take on meaningful work, and to care deeply about what you're involved in. Would you like to work for a company that says we can't spend shareholders' money on community projects, we can't waste funds on ethically produced inputs? Or would you like to work for a small business that says we care, end of story, if we can make a positive impact, it's more important than squeezing out every last cent of profit? Chances are if you're a top performer today, then you want to work somewhere where you're recognised and you feel your work makes a difference. If you're an entrepreneur, then it's your time. Never in history has there been a better time to be a small business and to have entrepreneurial spirit lit up within you. The entrepreneurial revolution will take place. There is no point fighting it. It's the way to empower a lot of people. This event is designed to get you ahead and making decisions by looking into the future rather than looking into the past. Just like the farmers had to change their way they viewed the world or they'd end up as factory fodder, we too must change. We must develop a more entrepreneurial nature. We must wake up the part of ourselves that's okay with change, that loves a challenge, that takes responsibility and that truly cares. We must become key people of influence. We must cease being industrialised workers and start being entrepreneurs. For all of those reasons, I'm very proud to introduce you to the business that we're launching next year, in 2012, designed to lead the way in the entrepreneur revolution. Ladies and gentlemen, you're the first people to discover our new business launching next year called Entrevo.